Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Walk the Block. We are navigating digital finance all together. Well, we're here to kick off the New Year's. So happy New Year's. Happy 2026 to everybody out there. And well, we started this one with a pretty big bang. Yes, the U.S. did have a direct action strike in Venezuela, and their president was taken for charges in the Second District Court of New York, where he will face charges pretty much just for being the head of a counter-terrorist, narco-terrorist organization effectively. But we're going to be talking about what that means for the crypto markets, what that means for the world stage, and we're even going to be getting into a little bit of an update on some crypto price action because, ladies and gentlemen, we have movement, and it's exciting to see. So, with all that being said, hello, everyone. I'm your host, Zenith, and I'm joined by an excellent cast of characters here tonight. Up first, Dace. How you doing, buddy?
I'm well, sir. I'm well. Glad to be back. Had a little bit of a hiatus here on Monday nights. It's been a very busy season for me, but I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. Love having you on. And as always, Tracker is joining us for the third man. How's it going, man?
Going great, man. It's good to get back here. We had a couple of weeks off. Everybody just needed to probably decompress. Well, that was a good time to decompress because we didn't expect a whole lot of action in December, but we certainly have started things off with a bang in January. And kind of was telegraphed a little bit. Not to say that this was all the events we're going to go into was forecasted. Some will say yes, some will say no. But anyhow, yeah, looking forward to it, man.
True. Alrighty. Well, give me one sec because I do have a funny that I want to pull up for this one. Where did it go? Alrighty.
I very much appreciated the thumbnail you put together for this little get together. It's also quite funny.
True. So, not going to try to bear the lead at all tonight. So, coming to us, if you happen to follow this little known account on Twitter, this is the Pentagon Pizza Report, or this is a tracker of all the local pizza joints near the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. And well, yeah, there was something going on pretty much right as we had all the military efforts going on for the direct action strike in Venezuela. So the quick TLDR of it is, well, pretty much good old President Donald Trump directed action for the U.S. to conduct operations in Venezuela. It took less than 4 hours to complete start to finish. This included taking down air defenses, also going in there and snatching the president before he could even make it into the panic room, and his wife. And then we even got the famous photo of him coming back on the aircraft carrier or the Navy ship with all the boys that snagged him. And now he is on his route to New York, where he will face charges for pretty much narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices. So pretty much just some classic cartel activity. So absolutely big shout out to all the boys out there wearing the uniform. This was a fantastic demonstration to remind the world that, yes, far and away, the United States military is hands down the most powerful and effective fighting force this planet has ever seen. So if there are ever doubts about that, let this send a message and be like, nope, no doubts anymore. But that is pretty much what we got going on. And the article here is kind of asking the big question of, are we going to see a widespread correction? And the answer is actually probably not. So the reason that this question comes up is because one of the things that we've seen in the past is that whenever there is large-scale conflict or any sort of instability, anywhere across the globe, there usually is a quick reaction in the crypto markets and also traditional finance markets. Pretty famously, back in April of 2024, during the summer after Bitcoin went up pretty high, and then we chopped sideways for effectively a year. Every time there was action going on in the Middle East with Israel and Hamas, you could look at the chart and pinpoint the exact red candle showing the date and pretty much time of when that stuff was going down. Slightly different on this one, though. So I guess the question to you guys is, what's different this time around? What's going on?
I think we talk a lot about cycles. That word gets used a lot. Whether it's a political cycle or like a financial cycle, or in this case, a geopolitical cycle, or a narrative, right? A news spin cycle. I think coming into the end of 2025, the Trump administration had a really tough time in the news cycle for a myriad of reasons. We could probably pull that apart the whole hour if we wanted to. But I would say, yeah, this was timed well. by the administration in terms of if you want to look at it as a purely tactical decision. On the financial front, like you said, on the militaristic show of force front, and in the news cycle, I think it was a win for the administration in some ways. I saw a really funny meme with Trump pointing at the camera and smiling, and the caption saying, "For my next trick, I'm going to make the No More Kings people defend a confirmed dictator." Thought that was pretty funny. So yeah, look, an adept political move by the administration, make no mistake. And there's other reasons why. Obviously, we're most interested in the financial reasons why here. Tracker, you want to share some of the financial reasons why America would have such an impetus to do this?
Well, of course, it's all about stopping fentanyl and illegals coming from the United States. I mean, that's what they were told on the mainstream media, right? That's all. And so there's nothing to see here. Move along. All right, so let's talk about what transpired to how we got here. Little quick history lesson. In the Middle East, a guy called Saddam Hussein was trading in oils, and he was talking about getting off the petrodollar. And I'm not saying that this is or not true, but then you had U.S. forces come in, overthrow that regime. And of course, we blew everything up and then rebuilt it. Then Gaddafi was talking about this in Algeria. He was taken out. Then you had Putin bringing it up about trading in non-petrodollars as well. Well, he became basically, the boogeyman, or whatever you want to label him, and he's been basically in those lights with the American government since then. And that's still been going on this has been over a decade now that's been going on. Now you have what's going on in Venezuela, and they were starting to trade their crude oil, which they're sitting on 17% of the world's supply. It's the largest supply. And on Days, you put a great chart out there that it shows the amount of supplies that they have that's we'll call it unmined or undrilled, right? They're sitting on these reserves. It is much larger than Saudi Arabia. It's massive. And BRICS have known this. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and some say South America, some say Saudi Arabia, whatever you want to call it. But these countries have been starting to trade in non-petrodollars. And we've been on the show talking about this. They've been trading in cryptocurrencies. They've been trading other assets in non-US dollars, and it's the world currency. So the world expects you to use the US dollar, and when not, these events start to happen. Agree or disagree, it's irrelevant. It's just factual, right? You can go back and look at this stuff, and this is what happens. Now, they're sitting on this massive supply. That supply was starting to be traded through the Russian financial system, and they were trading it in the digital yen, or the yen itself. They were trading to the Russian financial systems. So that was happening, and the United States was like, okay, that's not good. Could there be fentanyl coming out of there? Could there be illegals coming out of there? 100%. Yes, there could be. I'm not going to sit here and debate that. To me, it's minuscule to the larger picture. So that is a good narrative for the people, to buy into the narrative and be behind it. Now, that transpired. Let's take a step back too, though. In the beginning, when this administration got put into power, like I said, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I'm just trying to lay out the facts of what we know. So they decided the United States was going to treat drug cartels as terrorists. Remember, they came out and stated that? That allowed the government then to use military might and forces to go after these cartels. Case in point, you just saw it on full display. That's what you just saw. Now, why did they take him out? I think they're using him as my 2 cents. I can't vouch this. I think it's just he's being used to basically, flex their muscle to say, anybody else want to step up and go against it? We'll be knocking on your door next. Agree or disagree? I'm not here to do that. But so I think that was what was clearly stated. I know China and I know the BRICS are not happy about this, because they were starting to work together, and we talked about it. They were working on that gold vault system, on a payment system where they're holding it, trading. Well, this is a huge oil deal, so this is going to cause some rips. And I know they've already completely rejected this entire force of might that's been shown. They're not happy about it. Interesting enough, right before this went down, there was, I've got the numbers here. I was gathering up notes all day today on this. China and Russia had transferred $2 billion of silver out of Venezuela right before the U.S. invasion. I thought that was very interesting. And then and then the interesting thing is, so Zenith, I know I'm kind of jumping around here, so I'm going to try to reel this in a little bit. So those are the events that kind of led up around the world. We see the might, we see some of the stuff that transpired going into this, with the drug cartels being labeled as terrorists. That now allows us to go after it. They used the idea that fentanyl was the big thing, right? That was the big one we keep hearing about. In those charges, Zenith, does it say anything about fentanyl?
Based on the quick glance, no, just outside of drug trafficking.
Correct. And instead, they're using cocaine. So fentanyl is not even in the charges. So I find that very interesting, even though they're throwing it out there. I just thought that was interesting. It's here nor there. But so we've got them selling in non-petrodollars. We have this might being shown. Now you got to ask yourself the question, okay, so what does this exactly do? Well, Venezuela was sitting on a massive amounts of assets that they've been accumulating for about 25 years. Keep in mind, Venezuela is a massive stockpile. And I don't think there was a lot of stuff that happened in the past. I'm not going to go down this whole rabbit hole of what happened on that stuff, why they were able to accumulate what they did. But it feels like Venezuela is almost like Iran all over again, but just a lot quicker process is what it feels like. In the sense that they've overthrown, they're now going to rebuild it back up. They're going to build the infrastructures. I mean, it was less than 24 hours. I mean, a war is kind of a joke to say, but the BRICS will absolutely get pissed about this. They probably will start to liquidate some of the U.S. debt that they're holding because they're not happy about it. The U.S., the big oil companies are going to profit big time. Chevron, Exxon, ConocoPhillips. There's already been speculation. Some of those stocks have already starting to move a little bit on this news because all this stuff has to get refined. Venezuela was pumping out a massive amount of oil, but then they've slowed down quite a bit because of there's a lot of reasons, infrastructure, all types of problems. And they were talking about building this up. China was over there trying to do some of this as well, but obviously the United States stalled this. They got in front of it. They made the move, and now you're going to have these oil companies building up the infrastructures, and you're going to start to see that. Dace, I know you had mentioned about the Bitcoin that was confiscated as well. So along with gold, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin specifically, and all that crude, a lot of stuff was just confiscated, a massive amount. We're talking trillions here of dollars of the amount of stuff that they have just confiscated, or they're going to liberate the country. There's more. I can go down this rabbit hole here. I'm not going to try to go too deep because I don't want to get our channel basically turned off. But right now, there's a lot of stuff going on with some of the other players there in Venezuela, we'll say. But I don't want to get into it. But there's definitely a lot of movement going on. Keep this in mind. Interesting fact, when Cuba was overthrown, 3 times the United States held Cuban elections for 3 times during 1900 and 1939 to build their Cuban constitutions. It's going to be probably something similar to that. It's what I'm hearing a lot of experts talk about this. So they keep referring back to that. So I would say maybe go look at that. But at those times, Cuba did not end up really well. All right. Just saying, something you might want to go take a look at. Now, why do we care about all of this? Well, you need to know what has transpired over the years to kind of know your past, to know what you're going forward, because everybody tends to have a short memory on what's going on, and they tend to jump to reactions on why something is happening or what's going to transpire from this. Personally, I think what's going to happen is obviously the oil companies are going to make a lot of money because there's a lot of oil there. This is going to definitely stymie the BRICS. It's going to cause a lot of tension. I think you're going to also see some stuff trying to transpire between, obviously you still got, keep in mind, don't lose focus on the fact that Europe wants to go to war with Russia. There's been a lot of fighting going on there, and there's a lot of stuff happening over there too. So that's still kind of very uneasing what's going on. So that's one thing that I think people don't need to lose focus on. I think this is going to definitely send a message to the BRICS that United States has kind of had enough. I don't know if they're going to retaliate in some other fashion. I'm not saying whether physical might or by dumping the U.S. bond market or what's going to happen, but there's definitely going to be a ripple effect that they're going to counter with. But I think it's interesting because the confiscation is quite a bit. We're talking large amounts of silver, large amounts of gold, cryptocurrency, and then this oil. So a lot to unwind there. A lot of assets just got basically confiscated. And now they can put in a regime that's going to be very much in line with the United States. And you just cut off a major asset that the BRICS were trying to bypass the U.S. US dollar. And keep in mind, don't be fooled by it 1 second. This whole thing is about strengthening the US dollar and stop its become weak. And that's what one big factor here is going on. I know I kind of spit out and regurgitated a lot. I'll pause there if you guys want to get into it, but that's
I'll jump in here.
What we've done.
I'll try to put a bow on the geopolitical / military standpoint on this one. So this is similar to what you mentioned previously, which is that we saw President Trump help strike Iranian nuclear facilities previously. In and out, done, boom, over. Seen a very similar thing on this one. The big thing that's different on this one is that there was the press conference afterwards, and does Donald Trump say a lot of things? Yes, absolutely. But one of the things he said is that temporarily the United States could be running Venezuela. Okay, now what does that immediately call you back to? That immediately, I think, calls people back to the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, where we pretty much spent 20 years trying to do nation building and didn't do a very good job of it. So, direct action against a confirmed adversary, I argue that's a very good thing and actually very justifiable. What to do from here, that's the next part that I think is going to really require some answers. So, pretty much Maduro, there's a lot of allegations that the last election pretty much was stolen, fraudulent, whatever, and he's not the rightful person to be the president of Venezuela. Okay, got it. If that's the case, and that means what do we do now? Well, someone else is going to have to fill in, or pretty much there's going to someone will fill in, whether it's an election or just pretty much people that are already in the government that fill in for now. Another big difference about what's going on here compared to all the other stuff is that, again, strike on Iran was just in and out, done. This, I would argue, is slightly different because explicitly the oil. Venezuela is, like you mentioned, one of the richest oil deposits on the face of the planet. Being run by a socialist dictator for the last 27 years, you can imagine that their economy has not been as efficient, as profitable, especially when it comes to the oil. So because of that, it means that this is an untapped market. The thing that's different about this one is that it's a little bit of I can understand the argument when people are using the C word, the conquest word, about going in and taking spoils of war, if you will. So energy is the lifeblood of a nation and the economy in the 21st century, by far. Is this an excellent opportunity to capitalize on that and recoup some of what's going on? Yes. At the same time, though, even if you just want to take that out, because I understand it's getting a little bit kind of into like the not quite tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, but it's things that people are legitimately talking about. But overall, even despite the oil, you can look at it and say that, yes, this was absolutely part of geopolitical and military strategy. If you guys want to read more about this stuff, what is specifically going on here is combating TCOs, or transnational criminal organizations. The Department of Homeland Security puts out a document periodically called the Western Hemisphere Strategy. That is pretty much how they want to try to ensure security for the United States and everything in the Western Hemisphere. That's pretty much everything from England to the Asian shores, and North America is smack dab in the center of it. The TCOs, or the transnational criminal organizations, pretty much just cartels, effectively. What we're trying to combat is that these are confirmed adversaries that are deeply embedded in a lot of governments. So Venezuela was a big one. Before this, we even saw that there were actually green lights on drone strikes on drug boats coming to the United States in international waters. Again, it's very above board. You can cry about it a lot if you want, but at the same time, though, Venezuela actually made a big mistake when it came to the reaction to that, because they said, why are you hitting our boats? It's like, oh, those are yours. So that belongs to a nation state. So those are legitimate military targets now. Okay, got it. And then obviously Maduro is talking a lot of smack, saying, come get me, I'm not scared. Well, we got you, buddy. Be scared now. So the overall strategy is like, look, the U.S. is the dominant force in the Western Hemisphere, and trying to eliminate organizations that are against its interests and are committing legitimate horrific crimes, both when it comes to the amount of drugs that are being trafficked, but also when it comes to providing trafficking for humans, whether it's illegal immigrants or the much more nefarious kind of human trafficking, that kind of stuff. All this is good stuff, separate from the oil issue. The oil issue, you could either say it's just the cherry on top, or it's something to help sweeten the deal. But overall, what it does is it is a large economic driver for sure, and it will have ultimate ramifications on the entire economic landscape. us being the crypto channel, we care about the economic landscape a bit more than we care about talking about geopolitical stances on here. And that is very understandable. So at the end of the day, I happen to think it was a good thing. It's yet to be determined if it's good continuing, if we get into the nation building, or if we just try to find a way to have a peaceful transfer of power and hopefully start turning some of these very socialistic states down in South America, which, by the way, they have a very strong track record of having socialist policies for pretty much the last 100 years. So it might be easier said than done on that standpoint, but at the same time, it's going to be a little unstable for a while. But at the same time, there is potential upside to all of this. So hopefully that puts a nice little bow on it. But yeah, let's talk about the seizures next. I think it's a good point to jump off on.
Yeah, I will say this though. I don't know how you pronounce her name. I put it in our private chat, Maria. I feel like she's probably going to be the one that's going to be most likely the head candidate to be the leader of Venezuela. They're probably going to put in, like I said, that's why I was saying going back referring to Cuba Constitution, just like they try to do the same thing in the Middle East. They're going to probably put something in act. Basically, to me, the way I look at this is Venezuela is going to become a close partner of the United States now, probably, and probably we can see how this is going to play out. But I would assume Venezuela is going to be more in line with the United States, and maybe less so with the BRICS. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out, but I think it's going to be more in line with the United States because of the actions that just transpired. Keep in mind, Argentina has already made negotiations on working out deals with the United States earlier this year, or 2025. That's already happened. And other countries, South America, are supported by the United States as well. Brazil's the big one that's part of the BRICS, obviously. So it'd be interesting to see how that transpires. And of course, they've stated that they may move into other countries if need be. So that'll be interesting. So there's a lot more we can unwind here. I know we want to get into more other aspects, but like I said, the assets are interesting. The crypto, the oil, all this. The reason why we're bringing all this full center to try to explain all this is that these assets are going to most likely help the U.S. economy regardless, and it's going to help the economy. It's going to help probably strengthen the U.S. dollar in the sense that the United States is trying to make deals what they can to try to ensure the economy is going to do well, and this is certainly going to strengthen it with the oil companies, with everything else that's going to transpire. So that's what I'm looking at it. And I think that's why you're seeing some of the price action. We can talk about that in a little bit, but the price action, why you're starting to get some of these movements, not just in the oil companies, but in crypto. Do we want to move into precious metals? Do we want to move into that? Do we want to beat up this a little bit more?
Let's speed this up a little more.
Any comments?
So Argentina has Javier Milei, very transformative figure, definitely moving away from socialist governance style.
Correct.
Chile just had an election. I believe it was the Communist Party got second place, meaning they lost, but at the same time, that's still a lot of support over there. Brazil is obviously part of BRICS, but also Venezuela has been a pretty close adversary with China and Russia. So a lot of military equipment from there, and also a lot of oil deals going between them. So this does strike Russia and China for sure. And as you mentioned, China was trying to get the gold-backed currency going. And, well, if you believe that the U.S. still runs the petrodollar, well, having more petroleum as a resource can theoretically only help strengthen it on the world stage. So military action, yes. Could it also benefit the U.S. dollar in positioning to the rest of the currencies in the world? I would also argue, yeah. Granted, we're going to have to see if that actually transpires from the effects here on out. But at the same time, though, like, does talking about this random military strike have any relevance on crypto? I would argue yes. It's not direct, but it's very tangential, but it's kind of setting up the rest of the chessboard. It's not moving a chess piece directly to move Bitcoin towards adoption or driving prices higher, but it's definitely altering the landscape and the balance of power in the world. And right now we are at that stage of the game where we've seen a lot of countries talking about getting into crypto reserves. We've seen a lot of, honestly, companies and entities that are able to rival nation states starting to build up crypto reserves, looking at TradFi in particular on this one effectively. So that's the kind of scale that we're looking at on this one. Granted, as individual investors, we are not going to have that much sway on the crypto markets on a day-to-day basis based on our purchases. But again, this is the scale of the game that we're moving into. If you truly want crypto to thrive and be adopted, it's moving towards that stage, and it's going to keep moving further and further that direction. So that's why things like this matter. It matters because it's going to help change the balance of power. It's going to help change the landscape. It's going to help change the currencies. And yes, crypto is competing against all those other currencies. So if if you want a strong dollar, I happen to live in the United States, so I would like a strong dollar. But at the same time, one of the things we've been talking about a lot this year is that the US dollar has been definitely losing some steam, and a lot of other people have been picking up steam. And this is a little bit of a reversal on that. So I'm not going to say it's getting back to a more normal state or back to the old state, but it's definitely trying to change the trajectory, I'd argue.
I'll even piggyback on that. Bloomberg, they came out and stated that the Russian currency would be the strongest currency to hold for 2026. Thought that was an interesting take. Yeah, Bloomberg came out on that one.
I'm a new explanation on this one.
They just stated it was going to be the gun. I don't have a lot on it. I just was doing a lot of research and I stumbled across that they had nominated that one to be the strongest. I didn't get into the why factors, but I thought that was interesting.
Oh no! The only relevance for Russia that I've seen on this one is that all the memes are people showing the SpongeBob memes of Squidward looking at his house, seeing Patrick and SpongeBob running around. It says the U.S. conducting special operations in a matter of 3 hours. Meanwhile, Russia has conducted special operations for 3 years and is devolving into World War I trench-style warfare.
Right.
So you can learn a thing or two.
Right.
I think it's like I said, the timing of it combined with there's just a lot of, like you said, positive angles for the United States as a direct result of this action. It is decently defendable, right, from a political standpoint, and it's financially quite the boon. I've seen lots of rumors, like you said. There's rumors swirling about the Bitcoin confiscation. There's also unconfirmed reports of there being Chinese diplomats in town when this went down. So yeah, I think it certainly was not an accident, and there's lots of noise out there saying, other third world countries or other similar countries, you guys gotta, are on notice. That's the vibe that's out there right now, and with good reason, I would suppose. But are they likely to go do that to other countries that don't have the oil supplies? We'll find out.
I would argue there's a decent probability of similar action against similar countries in the hemisphere, namely South America, Caribbean, North America. Look at it, Mexico on that one, pretty much. So I think the angle is still very similar. Whether or not we're going to be going over across a sea, I think that one's a different story entirely. But it's possible. I don't know if it's likely, but it's possible.
I think Colombia would be the next one if they were to go out, just because they've been pointing them out, though. But I don't know if that's going to hold anything. But I was curious if, it'd be really interesting if you find them going into El Salvador. That would be interesting. Because of the fact that El Salvador is the first one that's been trying to unite a lot of the countries that are not part of the G8, right? Because they've been trying to have their own meetings and trying to come together and form something a little bit more cohesive, and going with crypto and trying to break away from the petrodollar, or just the world currency being the US dollar. So that's been a huge threat. I'd be curious to see if something transpires out of that, because they've been leading that charge for the last few years. So it'd be interesting. But
I don't know if El Salvador is in the same vein, though, because obviously
they're
championing Bitcoin for sure. Go from kind of the currency wars aspect of this could theoretically be a threat. At the same time, El Salvador is a very, very small country, although there is actually a lot of Americans down there, or expats, if you will. But at the same time, it's definitely a lot smaller player when it comes to the neighboring countries. And if anything, it's actually a lot friendlier to the United States, I would argue. So direct military action target? Probably not. I think there are a lot better options. But as someone who could be an ally to help maybe combat some of the things going on, and then ultimately, look, if the USA is serious about getting into the Bitcoin game, they could probably learn a thing or two from El Salvador. So,
well, it won't go after El Salvador just because the fact that the IMF already kind of slapped them on the wrist, and they kind of got in line already about a year ago.
Yeah, thanks, IMF. Appreciate that.
They're always looking out for everyone's best interest.
Whose best interest?
Theirs. That's a narrative we don't want to go down. But so yeah, I would say that's kind of what's happening. It's going to benefit the United States, certainly. It's going to, like we said, it's going to definitely stymie BRICS. It's going to strengthen the United States and allow them to start putting things in place with everything we've already outlined. Do we want to roll into what's going to be transpiring with how we're seeing the precious metals and how things are starting to ramp up, you're definitely seeing a cascading effect going down the line now.
Yeah, let's take a look at the charts.
Interesting. So the first one I would say is gold has been very obviously gold has had its run. And keep in mind, man, you got to understand a lot of these like gold and silver typically will just go sideways for a decade or up and down, stay in a trend, and then eventually go parabolic. And this is what you've kind of seen. But you saw gold make a big move, right?
It's
Then
continuing to make its big move. Because I remember this peak right here. We were talking about this one, but we're now way higher than that one.
a lot higher, I wouldn't say, but yeah, right. It's still continuing to go. But then you see rotation into silver. Silver has made a nice move that's actually outperformed gold since it's peaked. And if the move was, if you can almost see the money rotating down. So, and this is a typical this is how you see a lot of times when you do interest rate cuts, when you start seeing other actions taking place where the money starts to trickle down through the economies to work its way down. There's other factors here. Obviously, it's much more complex than just how simplistic I'm making it to be. But gold will typically have its run. Of course, remember, stocks all had their run. They all are near all-time highs. If you look at like the U.S. market specifically, S&P, the Dow, even the Russell 2000, they're all floating at their all-time highs. You saw then rotation in gold. Gold started then running. Then you saw rotation from gold. You saw silver then turn play catch up. Palladium, things like that were all starting to really run and all starting to hit new all-time highs. And then you're starting to see copper now make a big move. Now, why do we care about copper? Well, silver and copper, silver's used in a lot of development too, but copper's massively used in a lot of infrastructure building. So copper's really been making a move here. And what's interesting there is it goes back to what we keep repeating on. I know others have talked on this too, is the ISM number. Like we do never going to see the economies really move until you see the ISM number move. Well, copper is starting to have a breakout. Now zoom out and see how it's been in that. It's been kind of in that sideways consolidation range. If you zoom out and copper and go back to what you had there, because you see there, it's kind of been in this little, yes, it's been kind of going up, but you're starting to see more of a parabolic move. It's kind of been grinding sideways to the up slightly, and then all of a sudden it's gone parabolic. So to me, what it sounds like is you're rotating out of gold, rotations into silver, rotation into other things like palladium things. Now you're seeing it rotate into the copper, which is going to hopefully lead into the ISM number, which is what we're all waiting for, because that ISM number starts to roll, which is the narrative we keep pounding the table on here around here, is if we see that start moving, then that should translate into the crypto market starting to move. And we have already gotten some action in the Bitcoin and Ethereum, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but just gonna get your guys' thoughts on that. But it typically flows down that way. And that's typically how things flow down. The money starts to go into the laggers. People are starting to take on more riskier assets. And that's what you're starting to see.
For sure. I guess this is a little bit of a callback to an episode we did a couple of weeks ago where I broke down pretty much what goes into PMI, ISM, all these business indicators. And a lot of them are production statistics. One of them being how much stuff are you producing? What does your inventory look like? What are the warehouses? What are your orders? Well, if the price of something is going up this much, I would argue it shows an increase in demand. And if there's an increase in demand, the charts are about as real time as we can get. So if that's the case, then it kind of means that it's going to be a bit of a lead up to an increase in these numbers. So we try to use the PMI and the ISM as kind of like leading indicators for the crypto market overall. Well, we're looking at the raw materials here, and these are even the leading indicators for our leading indicators. So we have to wait and see what transpires from this, but this kind of is that first little flag to signify that there is something going on, which is why it's important to pay attention to this stuff. And also, gold, very much a metal for stability against monetary issues. Silver is much more of a technology-based metal, and then copper is definitely an infrastructure-based metal. So looking at the charts, gold still doing well. I would argue it's still continuing a similar trajectory from the past. Silver, this chart right here, we've seen a very aggressive move towards the upside, whether you want to say it's tech-related or people even using this as a little bit of a hedge against monetary issues, same thing. But if we flip back over to the copper, I think I got the futures on here. Or yeah, copperoncapital.com. Okay, yeah. This one, we're even seeing a lot of move towards the upside. Futures markets are going big as well. Futures markets are a little bit different. and you got to definitely take it with a grain of salt, but it's trying to predict price in the future, kind of like a forethought about the options markets going on there. But at the same time, though, if the futures markets are going up, odds are spot markets going up as well. So overall, our indicator here this is a leading indicator for what we care about, which is seeing the overall economic situation do better. And when we see the overall economic situation really start to heat up and we get into the hot part of that business cycle, well, that's when the assets go up and that's when crypto goes up.
Yeah, and keep in mind, we feel like things have been suppressed for a while. I mean, like the ISM or the PMI number have been just stalled out for an extended amount of time. I think how long has it been? This is the longest it's gone from crossing into the 50s for what, 80 years or something like that. It's something ridiculous. So it just tells you that it's been really held under for a long period of time. And I get the consumer sentiment is very low too, though, and rightfully so. I mean, tariff, everything's gotten expensive to live. There's a lot of reasons that Main Street's been hurting, so that's understandable. But with all this stuff going on there, while we go back to Venezuela, that's going to most likely strengthen the United States economy because of all the things we already outlined. And you're starting to see things starting to make moves. So it's interesting. You're starting to see a lot of things starting to kind of give you a lot of telltales. And once again, I love being on the contrarian side. While most people are telling you don't be in crypto, don't be in risk assets, things like that, it's starting to show that maybe that is the basically be playing, that you want to be in those riskier assets and be positioned there because everyone's so bearish. Typically when people get so bearish, it doesn't take a lot to get a snap reaction that ends up causing a big momentum because people are like, wait, what? And I know we'll talk about the price action, but for the crypto markets, but you're seeing some really good movements. You're seeing some solid movements. Some life going on. But it was funny because everything was kind of dead in December, just kind of rocked everybody to sleep. Not a lot of movement, and more people are more on the side that we're going into this 4-year cycle. We're going to go down. Well, like I said, we keep outlining this time and time again that everything keeps building a more of a narrative that we should be going. Riskier assets should be taken on. I don't know what else to say. Just now, here comes copper now to add to the narrative to show you that the expansion is coming. And if they're going to keep cutting rates like we think they're going to cut rates with the new Fed chair, then if that's going to happen, money's going to get cheaper. People are going to rebalance. People are going to spend more, and that tend to be more spending going on because people have more cash to spend. And that's what I think keep coming back to.
That sounds about right. Saying that December was a very, very quiet month is a bit of an understatement. Gosh, like most of December, there was like a small pump and then small correction, but then outside of that, we just chopped sideways, specifically when it comes to like and Ethereum and stuff. A lot of the alts just continued bleeding, unfortunately. But at the same time, though, like market was not doing a whole lot. It's doing a little something.
It wasn't.
But
right. But we called that. We actually called that in December. We're not going to see any action in December because most people aren't going to make any major movements. They're just going to keep things going. They're just going to keep things trucking along. And it was like what I like to call it, the barcode, just kind of chopping sideways, giving you a little barcode action going on. But I was more shocked by the movement we got off of the lows in November and started rallying up and having these new higher highs going into like December. I was more shocked by that. I expected more just kind of sideways, but it was just a consolidation. And that's what I looked at. It was a lot of chop and sideways consolidation. Now, the big question is, what's going to transpire going into Q1? Of course, a lot of people are in the camp that, you might see a little relief rally going in now, and then you're going to have just a continuation to the downside. I just still can't understand, like, why would you have a continuation to the downside if institutions keep accumulating, certainly crypto, and all these other indicators we keep talking about are showing more signs of an appetite for riskier on assets. And like we just saw gold, silver, we see all this stuff moving down the line. Well, typically you're going to rotate into the laggers. Well, crypto has been a huge lagger there, very risky asset. So do we see it rotate in there and catch a lot of people blindsided? Because I'd say more people are probably bearish than they are bullish in the crypto markets. So if that's the case, I think you get that shock and we get that max pain we keep talking about. We've already had max pain to the downside. Could we get a reversal going up and have max pain on the bears? Still likely. I know people need to see more to believe it, and rightfully so. but
That's fair. Tell
that's
you what,
the camp I'm in.
coming to us from Cointelegraph, Bitcoin enters a strength phase, but 100K debate heats up between traders. So, key takeaways. A key indicator flip firmly bullish as Bitcoin reclaimed a positive position above $90,000. Momentum and channel positioning favor continuation, but near-term overbought risks remain elevated. On-chain accumulation continues to absorb supply while traders disagree on whether 100K mark expansions or exhaustion. So, one of the big things we're looking here is going into a risk-on phase. One of the trackers they use is the Bitcoin price structure, and well, it's gone rather positive lately. We had a little bit of positive action towards the beginning of December. This is when we bounced off of our lows in late November. Then, outside of that, additional indicators, Bitcoin momentum and on-chain channel position, again, looking like it's going towards the upside or a positive. This is our 21-day high and 21-day low support. So overall, it's actually trending slightly upwards. And then Bitcoin accumulation continues. A lot of people were talking about whether or not we got a bull trap going on with something like this, and we're going to see a correction and catch a lot of people that were hoping on longs. That is definitely a possibility, and it's up for debate. But ultimately, that kind of stuff, I think you kind of just got to take it one day at a time. And if it turns out to be that, turns out to be that. But at the same time, though, Bitcoin continues to be accumulated. There's a lot of people that are going up. And again, retail, that's our orange chart, our orange portion of the chart here, continues to increase positions as well. So it's not just the three of us crazy people on the internet saying, I swear it's going up. No, this is something that's actually being hotly debated right now, and people are paying attention to a lot of the fundamentals going on. And I'll even flip over to it real quick. Our old CoinGlass ETF inflow chart. Well, didn't see a whole lot for November, but starting off the year, we actually got a few decently sized green candles coming in. Granted, it's definitely more outflows over the last month than inflows. And considering we had outflows on the ETF side of the house and price effectively didn't move at all for like 3-4 weeks there, I would argue that's actually kind of a bit of a signal of strength. Liquidations, somewhat similar story. Where'd you go? Where's my chart? There we go. Thank you. Liquidations are actually happening to people with the shorts on. And granted, it's only, what is it, $400 million today? So not a big day at all. And overall, we haven't seen any real massive spikes outside of when prices are moved aggressively towards the upside. But I had to go down on our time scale because if you remember, we're still getting over this, which is our famous $19 billion liquidation event. But outside of that, the market's, I think, hear me out, we're like 3 months past it. So it might be kind of outlandish to say that we're still recovering from it, but that was such a fundamental shift in the entire ecosystem, especially like Tracker, what you mentioned before. Like when sentiment gets bearish and then something happens, it can just trigger an absolute downslide or slide to the downside. And that's exactly what we saw then. So building the base back up, building momentum. We looked at the Cointelegraph article saying that the momentum indicators are turning positive and getting even more positive. So it's that kind of stuff that we're looking at. It's kind of quiet on the ETF front and the liquidation front, but at the same time, though, this is when people start buying positions. If they didn't already buy positions back when we had our flash crash down to $81,000 Bitcoin, because we're currently sitting about 93, 94. So overall, the number's looking pretty decent. Not gonna lie. Yeah,
We just got to grind through some key levels here though, but I can't see why they picked out that $100,000 level, because I mean that would be exactly, what is that, look at the fib level. That's right on one of the fib levels. Of course, it's a psychological number as well for
big
Bitcoin.
psychological number.
Yeah, so you could see why they have that one circled, but RSI's the regular strength has been picking up on everything.
Something that I
did we cross over the? Go ahead, Dave.
Sorry, go ahead. No, finish your.
No, you go ahead, man. I was just saying, did we cross over the 50-week moving average?
Let's check. Nope, we're still well below it. That's sitting right up at about 101,500. Looking at some of the technicals, though, on the daily chart, we are above the 20-day moving average by a good margin, and we had a healthy breakthrough the 50-day moving average as well. 20-day moving average is right about to cross over. That would signal a change in momentum from the short term to the medium term. But even these two, we are still a ways below our 200-day moving average, which is the long-term indicator. So nothing's guaranteed. We have a small confirmation of a start, but it's going to continue to need a run up to keep moving up. And like I mentioned, we're at that $94,000 level. Well, guess what? We pretty much bumped into it twice on back in the 3rd of December and the 10th and 11th of December. So we're going to see if this has become a resistance level. It appears to be a little bit, but if we can start moving past that, then we can start looking at those higher levels as we start making our way up towards, hopefully back up to that 50-week moving average. If we could retake the 50-week moving average, that would be a massive, massive signal that it's not over yet. I think that would be a big one because honestly, that is the biggest argument against the cycle continuing at this point. So that's what we're looking at. And by the way, if you want more of the excellent technical information, talking about specific levels, even more in-depth technical analysis, well, you got to join the Telegram for that one. Agent J did an excellent analysis in there. And by the way, shout out to all the guys that are in there. I know this guy's in there, Mr. No Money Mike. Always a pleasure to see you. And we got our buddy Moonpilled Rational Optics with the sunglasses as well, and our good buddy Will. He can confirm that El Salvador is pretty awesome. He's traveled down there a little bit himself, so I'll take his word for it. And he also says like that smash button. So appreciate you guys doing all the YouTube pleasantries as well. But yes, you want even the more of the good stuff, go sign up for the Telegram or hop in there if you're already in there. There's been a good amount of chatter going on. But I think Dace even posted some good stuff in there that you wanted to mention on here real quick, right?
Yeah. I'm always trying to drop little links that maybe spur conversation or will stick out in people's minds. Something that I think has always made the news and people talk about a lot as it pertains to let's say the growing intersection between traditional finance and Bitcoin, which is Jamie Dimon's famous thoughts about it. And he kind of changed his tune for the first time in a decade about it. Just recently saying that it's basically that he recommends it. I'm not going to misquote him, but if you Google it, he now is saying nice things about Bitcoin, and that's pretty novel for the person who is at the top of JP Morgan. And so I think whether you're looking at the charts or looking at the news, like things are changing. To keep with our sailing theme, the winds are changing for sure. And like it's funny to watch people remember how reflexive crypto can be to events like this, right? And I think you're going to have some disbelief, right? I wouldn't be here on the show if I wasn't going to give you my biased take, right? I try to give you the bear and the bull take, but my opinion, my personal conviction is I do think you're going to see a disbelief rally with market participants sort of surprised at Ethereum's move once we get the crypto framework passed. Another thing that I posted in the group is just a couple hours before it went live, the rumor came out that in the next 10 days, Congress may be voting on the crypto framework bill. And so if they don't kick that can down the road, things could move very quickly.
Interesting, because it's funny that Jamie Dimon, with all his quotes back in the day that crypto is nothing but money laundering for the black market, and that it's basically writing it off as a joke. But that's typically what happens when you have a new technology that comes in to threaten the infrastructure that you've been in place for forever. That's pretty much what you have to do. You're calling it out, but yet, and the whole time they were building up infrastructure plays, the whole time that they were saying that. So we know they were eventually going to come out and state it. The fact that he's now actually come out and saying it now, it tells me they've got all their pieces in place now.
That's exactly
all the other
right.
players. Yep.
Well said. Yeah, I think it's timely that the rumors about the government voting on the framework are happening the same time Jamie Dimon is now all of a sudden saying nice things about it. Interesting coincidence.
Yeah, keep this in mind. Jamie Dimon is one of the bank members. He's one of the bank committee members that do the oversight of the banking community in the United States. You can catch him on like C-SPAN 3 occasionally, talking about really important stuff that no one's going to watch C-SPAN 3. But yeah, talk about a lot of interesting stuff in the financial industry. They put it in the most boring channel you could possibly find, but rightfully so. Reasonings behind that. But yeah, so yeah, imagine that, banks regulating themselves. It's fantastic.
Because we've go poorly before, right?
Yeah. So all the pieces are in place now. Two of the big three have already now also stated, you caught that, that they've now opened up the gates to start telling their advisors, financial advisors, to start now allowing to push that to their clients. That is roughly a $12 trillion that they sit on, that they can start now injecting liquidity into their clients to put into crypto, saying it's actually a really good riskier asset if you're looking for more of a risk appetite for people's balanced portfolios. So expect that to have more inflows coming in. It'd be interesting to see what happens to the crypto that is in Venezuela now. That'd be fascinating to see what happens to it. But yeah, I think the whole time we keep showing up these charts. Retail is, even though some retail are accumulating, the larger whales seem to be accumulating, but most of their regular retail has been selling while the institutions keep accumulating their bags and accumulating more and more. So eventually you're going to run out of sellers, and institutions are going to be there to keep buying them up. Do we know when they're going to be voting for these Ethereum or Bitcoin treasuries to be either included or excluded from the markets? Because that's what's one bearish case, is that if they do vote to kick them out, that would cause them to lose a lot of shares, or people to dump their stocks, because if they're not allowed to be part of the market, then they wouldn't be allowed to be advised as stocks that they could give to their clients, because it's not part of the main indexes. I just thought that was interesting. I know they're going to be voting on that soon. I didn't know when.
If there's one thing you can count on for legislation, is that it's going to take longer than you think. I know it sounds crazy to say that we're happy that we got one major piece of crypto legislation last year, being the Genius Act or the stablecoin bill. That was fantastic. But all the other stuff, Clarity Act, Parity Act, a bunch of other crypto market structure bill stuff, that is continue to be kicked down the can a good bit. So if we can get one, maybe two of those in 2026, I think it'd be a big win. Honestly, though, I would argue it's going to have to come up soon rather than later, because we're getting around to midterm elections again. So that's going to be November of 2026. It's an even year, meaning that there's going to be seats up for play. And when that happens, not a whole lot happens in Congress and all that, but it's possible. I'm hopeful, but don't get your hopes too high.
So
to have some. Go ahead.
MSCI. The MSCI is what you were referencing. They basically could determine, like you said, if they were going to unlist the DATs, the digital asset treasuries, from the market. So the consultation period ended December 31st, which means official feedback window ended, and January 15th is going to be the final decision. And then there will be an index review in February. So that FUD will also hit its sort of timeline here in the next 10, 15 days.
True. And real quick, Will is coming in here with some interesting info. He's saying that CNBC says Venezuela may have quietly amassed a Bitcoin reserve worth tens of billions of dollars. I know we kind of kept dancing around this topic a little bit tonight, but let's hit this real quick before we get out of here. So, coming to us from Mexi, their news platform, not the actual exchange there, but how a potential Venezuela Bitcoin freeze could reshape the market in 2026. So to kind of go back to what we started off with, Venezuela is believed to be sitting on as many as 600,000 Bitcoin. This would equate to roughly 3% of the entire Bitcoin supply. So we're talking like Michael Saylor level here.
We keep this in mind. They were accumulating that Bitcoin back in, I want to say it started, they may talk about it here. Okay, there you go. Beginning of 2018, they started accumulating the Bitcoin. So they were getting really good. They had a good entry level. There you go, right there. Bitcoin priced at $5,000. They're sitting on a massive amount of Bitcoin at really good entry value prices.
For sure. So one of the reasons that we're talking about this one is it's, I guess, seizure and continuation of the story. But if you guys remember, there was a little story back in the summer of 2024 where Germany made headlines when they had seized Bitcoin. It was only 50,000 Bitcoin. But if you remember, this is actually them being forced to sell by their own policies that they didn't change. I don't know if they had any interest in changing it, but when they're going to sell it off by their own procedure standards, pretty much, that was a 15 to 20% dump right then and there. And that was one of the big markers of kind of the bottom for that entire summer. I want to see if I can pull this up real quick, because it was Yeah, here it is. Oh, here we go. So this giant red candle right here, that's Germany selling. That's Germany selling 50,000 Bitcoin on the open market effectively. That one right there. And that was pretty much after we had a nice run up in March, but this one was pretty much the low of the summer. So 50,000
Got gobbled up
Bitcoin.
pretty good though. Got gobbled up pretty
Oh,
quick.
yes, it did. The market was hungry for it. So 50,000 Bitcoin versus potentially 600,000. Granted, this isn't entirely confirmed yet, nor is it even saying that it's going to be sold on the open market to recoup costs or anything. But, well, with Venezuela in a little bit of trouble and some things changing over there, namely head of state and probably some people below them as well, it wouldn't be entirely too crazy to say that it might need to recoup some costs or generate some income. And something like that, selling off a good chunk of Bitcoin, might do something like that. There you go. We'll have to keep
Maybe. I don't know. I
What?
don't know if they'll be selling. I'm not a believer that they'd be selling off into the Bitcoin. No, I
Well,
don't think
look,
they would be.
it would be great to stuff it in the whatever, what do they call it, the reserve, and just say that it's there, and that way it's in their back pocket. They've got the leverage of having it in there without having it costed them a dime to procure it, right? That way they can
Yeah,
flex that they've got it for free. Yeah, we'll
they
see.
could. They could. I just don't. I think they're sitting on so much assets now, and they have so much stuff to work out deals. I mean, they're going to come in with it, with facilities, come in there and start billing out, and they can negotiate prices to do all types of stuff with the assets they're sitting on, especially with the crude alone. Not even talking about the gold and the silver and the
That's
Bitcoin
true.
they're sitting on.
That's
But
true. It can happen
I mean,
fast. It can
don't
happen
get me
fast.
wrong. Now, I'm more sinister. I'm thinking more like the institutions want to start pumping crypto to be a good investment for their clients. Well, what better way to do that to start seeing good returns on crypto going into 2026?
Well, of course.
If you get
Yeah.
some good price action going into Q1, like, hey man, it's a risky asset. These are really attractive. These are really making good deals. That's going to be easier to sell to the clients, get more people to buy into it. Then later on, that's the time to dump on people in the retail as you pump in more people to come in on the retail. And then of course that goes back to the narrative we kept talking about, which was suck in a lot more of the retail, then dump on them. Then they start screaming about there needs to be regulation on crypto. And then that's when the government says, you know what, you're right. We need to have more regulation on the crypto. So let's step in and do it. That was more the sinister side thinking.
Right. Well, and you just spelled out a cycle, right? And that's these things do move in a cyclical manner because of how they work. And so whether it's Agent J and dropping TA in the group or tuning in here with us Monday, thank you guys all for joining with us. And please consider joining the Telegram group. Like we just explained, there are many factors that could drastically change the crypto landscape in the next 10 to 15 days. And so keep it here locked with us.
Yes, sir. And folks, if you want to join the Telegram, what you can do is head on over to walktheblockndf.com, head over to the membership page, and you can find a link to join us through there. Around these parts, we like to say the waters get rough, so don't sail through them alone. Come join us as we navigate digital finance together. Private mentorship, exclusive live streams, Q&A galore. Go from beginner to intermediate to expert with us. When we all work together, we can all win together. Excellent. Alrighty, gentlemen. Any final thoughts before we get out of here for the evening?
No, sir. It should be the next few Mondays should be pretty interesting and eventful, I would say. Maybe not all taking over a country eventful, but eventful nonetheless.
Yeah, I think the classic people on Twitter of nothing ever happens, they were some of the losers of the week because guess what? Something happened. So
that's right. Down bad.
I hope we don't get something like this every week, but hear me out. If we continue to see things happen, I'm not opposed to it.
No doubt.
All right, Tracker. Any final thoughts, good sir?
For those still holding, hold. That's the best way I can tell you. Like, could things get bad? They could.
Called the wall of worry for a reason, right, Track?
That's right. But I would still like to be in the camp of the contrarian. More people are looking to either they've already sold some, they're looking to sell more, or dump the rest of their positions. More people looking to get out. Institutions are buying. We've listed out, I don't know, thousands of reasons why you should probably hold. Teach their own. Not financial advice. I'm not trying to be, but I'm just telling you what I'm doing. But in the long game, if you're looking at years out, there's no reason why you should even be worrying about what happens next week and all this, except we just keep stacking the pieces of this narrative to tell you where this world is going. I mean, they've already come out. BlackRock, Larry Fink, Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan, two of the big three that control, I don't know, 90% of all the markets in the United States with everything going on, are getting in with their clients. Everything is moving in this direction, and this is the world we're going. And it's certainly, to me, I'm more going to be in line with Ethereum because that's where the smart contracts are going to go. And they're not going to call them CBDCs. They're going to be under smart contracts probably. Like it or hate it, it's the world we're going towards, and everything's going to be on smart contracts. And we've talked about it in the past too. People need to stop thinking of Ethereum as a token, start thinking of it like a network, and start looking at what we've done in other previous shows. You might want to go back and look at it, how we broke down and told you how they're trying to price this new technology, just like .com bubble. They didn't know how to price these things. They're trying to figure out how to price it now with guys like Tom Lee and so forth on how to price these things. And we're pricing them based on how much assets are on the network. And if things are going to go more tokenized, the price of assets that are going to be on the Ethereum network are going to be massive. And that's going to lead into Metcalfe's law. Metcalfe's law is how many users are on the network, fee charges, all that stuff. You're building basically an infrastructure for the financial industry that smart contracts are being living on. You're seeing financial industry evolve before your eyes over these really picking up steam over the last few years. And now you're really seeing it come to fruition. I know you try to talk to people who don't really follow this. They're going to look at you like you're basically batshit crazy. It's from a word, but that's basically how they're going to look at you, as you're just some wacko. But typically, those are the people that are trying to be ahead of the game. You know, people that told you that Bitcoin was going to be a waste of time. Well, the people who are owning that for the whole time are looking pretty good now. So just long-term horizon, sit tight. If you've got anything on the side, if you feel uncomfortable, take a little off. If we get a rally up, take some off and have some money in case we dip back down, so you have some dollar cost average into play. Just keep some dry powder on the sideline. You can rest easy at night if your long-term horizon is much more than years out, and at the same time you've got dry powder to DCA in at lower levels. You're going to feel comfortable. If it goes up, you're going to feel comfortable. So find that niche where you can sleep good at night.
Agreed. Risk management's part of the name of the game, and then also coming up with your own strategy is the other name of the game for you individually. Because remember, we can all talk about this as a group, but at the end of the day, each of us are individuals making choices with our own hard-earned money. So, look, if you're in the kind of the shorter-term game like we are, where we're trying to find the top and then try to buy in on bottoms, yeah, we're paying attention to price for sure. If you are a buy and hold forever person, well, guess what? These might just be really good prices. Because I remember people are talking about, I miss the days when Bitcoin was under $1,000. Hear me out. It's not too crazy to say that in the next 5-10 years, we're going to be having that same discussion about, oh, I miss the good old days when Bitcoin was under $100,000. So please come up with your own strategy, understand your risk appetite as well. But if you're interested in that, we'd love to talk about that with you guys inside of the Telegram. And outside of that, we will catch you guys next Monday for another show. So while we get out of here, I just want to say thank you all so much for showing up. Always a pleasure seeing you guys. Centurion54X, I see you. I hope you have a great night as well. But to everyone out there, have a good one. Here's a good start to a 2026. Let's keep it going. All right. Good night, folks.